welcome to In the Rough with Angie. I am here with my new friend Michelle Wilson today. And Michelle is a Christian. She's a blogger. She blogs for women to help them heal, cover, overcome so that they can move forward in their purpose. And then she is also a heart sync minister, which she can tell us a little bit more about. I'm not fully familiar with that. But Michelle, just for us to kind of start to get to know you a little bit better, do you have a favorite childhood memory you could share?
Yeah, it's probably I would say a combination of memories. It's really just when I would visit my grandmother, my grandma and grandpa, but especially my grandmother. She was just such a very loving, sweet person, and I just really enjoyed all the times. Even when I was a teenager, I enjoyed going to visit with her. I didn't like lose that love and desire to do
Yeah.
that. And also with that, when I would get to see my cousins, because they were like obviously my extended family. So we always had a really great time, and she would always make really yummy dishes, like Southern, because she's from the South. So, like, chicken and dumplings, things like
Oh,
that I don't
yum.
eat now, and I don't eat that kind of stuff anymore, but at the time I loved it. So, yeah.
So how many cousins do you have?
I don't even know. I
A
don't even
lot?
know. There's so many of them. Yeah. I
That's
would say
awesome.
probably 15, maybe, on
Okay.
my
Were
dad's
you an
side.
only child or do you have brothers or sisters?
I have a younger brother. Yes.
Okay. How much younger? Is it a big age gap or no?
4 years, and then I have another
Okay.
brother, another half brother. Yeah.
Okay, that's not
Yeah.
bad. Okay,
Yeah.
so this podcast is all about being a work in progress
Mhm.
and being able to look back and see that there are things in life that we have overcome. And we can look back and we can see, okay, how did God help me out with this? How did other people help me out with this? How much of this was my own will and dedication to help overcome? And then we also can use those areas as tools to help us with our current challenges. So it helps us personally to look back and realize, oh my gosh, I did overcome that. And now I'm have a challenge, but I can still overcome the current challenge that I'm in. And Michelle, do you want to talk about, you had mentioned some childhood trauma that you wanted to talk about and how you got healing from that?
Yeah, I'll share, and if I miss something, feel free to chime in, say, "Hey, what about this?" I should start this by saying I don't want to villainize my parents in any way because they did the best they could, and they were very young when they had me, so it's understandable, especially being the firstborn. I was sort of like the test child, I guess, so to speak, with a lot of things. So just being raised in a very hyper perfectionist environment, pretty much installed in my put an imprint or programming in me that everything had to be perfect. So that really caused many challenges for me or made me feel like I could never do anything right. I was never good enough. So that pretty much was like like really unconscious and subconscious in my soul thing that was going on that would like hinder me in different areas of life. I mean, a lot of different areas with relationships in school. Even though I was a good student, I still struggled in some ways with public speaking. And funny enough, that is something I do feel called to. Just the way the enemy comes against us in the very areas that we're called to. One of
Yeah.
them was my voice being shut down, and that's a little bit of part of the trauma too, is the not being able to express my opinion or my emotions. And when those emotions are shut down, then that causes all kinds of things that can cause internal issues and emotional trauma as well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Like there's rejection, major rejection struggles, fear of man, fear of failure. I mean, pretty much all of it was rooted in fear. And a lot of the struggles I had were rooted in fear, not feeling good enough. Um, and then the second part of the question,
So, the second part of the question, and I can definitely relate to that, Michelle, what you were talking about with perfectionism. And I feel like I've struggled with that too. And I think a lot of that for me comes into making decisions. I've had a
hmm
hard time making sure that the decisions that I'm making are the right ones and giving myself grace in the learning process so I can identify with you in those feelings and in those areas. So the second part of the question was, how did you overcome this? How did you overcome the trauma, the perfectionism, the always having to live up to the right standard?
well, that's kind of a mixed answer. Part of it I'll answer now, and part of it will be when we do the second part of the interview.
Okay.
So it's an ongoing work, but perfectionism, I can't like say I can pinpoint one specific thing. I think it's really been a journey of getting to know the Lord better, really coming to understand my identity better through inner healing where you encounter the Lord and he shows you an area that you were believing a lie or a belief
Wow.
system, and he shows you the truth, and experiencing his love, the experiential aspect of truth that really brings change a lot faster than just like, okay, let's take the thought captive and replace it with the truth. So it's been a journey of inner healing in doing inner healing sessions, also just the ongoing daily walk with the Lord where he's revealed himself to me through the word or just through my times in encountering him. And part of it's also like making like almost like deliberate choices to do things that it's okay that it's not perfect. Like saying, it's like actually doing some godly, what I call godly self talk. Like, it's okay that it's not perfect. I'm just going to do this anyways. For example, my blog. God called me to start that in 2014. It wasn't quite time. I had many false starts. I finally launched it in 2021, but didn't make it public. I started create content but I didn't make it fully public until really just a few months ago. And there's stuff on there I want to update, but it needs to be updated. But I'm like, I'm just gonna release it, and with the encouragement of my mentor, just release it and don't worry about it. I'll go back and do that later. Before, I would have never been able to do that. I would have wanted everything to be perfect before sharing it publicly with the world. And if people look and see some of the things that I have on there and they don't like it, that it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. I'll be okay. Like, and so that's part of. There's a scripture. The two greatest commandments is to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And part of what we're called to do is love ourselves, and that's really loving and seeing ourselves the way God does. And so that's part of what I have learned, and that's been a huge part of my healing journey too. Is like releasing the blog or other things that are not perfect intentionally, going against what I was kind of raised under, this hyper perfectionistic environment, has been part of the journey too. But I still have, some areas where I'm still healing and growing as far as that goes. Yeah.
And that's understandable. I think for me, I don't know if this will make sense to you, but I felt like I couldn't be perfect. So then for a while in my life, I went over to the side of I'm not even going to care at all. Like I'm just
Yeah.
going to make a mess of my life. I'm going to do what I want to do, right? Like I'm not going to have any expectations of myself. And I can see that that is the area that God doesn't want us to go, but the area that the enemy says, "Hey, like, you're not perfect. You don't have it together, so you might as well just completely blow it, right? And not
Hmm.
even try." So I feel like I did that for a while in my life. And then coming back to the Lord, then I saw the signs again of like when I'm trying to get things in order, trying to get things right, that perfectionism comes back at me again. And I'm like, dang it, here it is again. Like I'm trying, now I'm actually trying to get it right. And what advice would you have for that when maybe we have turned from the Lord at a certain point in our life, but then we turn back and then the enemy comes at us in this different way of, you're never going to get it right with God. You're never going to have what it takes type of thoughts.
Well, that's individualistic. Each person is different in their journeys and what it would look like. But I would say part of it is obviously asking the Lord, Lord, what is the root of this? Like, why is this still going on here? And in what way does the enemy still have ground in my life? And
Okay.
a lot of times the enemy can have ground through our, unresolved pain and trauma. That can definitely be the case.
I'm a-
Another thing I think is really important is, well, practically how you can do that. There's a few practical ways. One is journaling. And I
okay.
actually will be I can share about that at the end, the gift I'd like to give to your audience that will help with that. But it's not just journaling like some people think of it. It's very intentional journaling,
Okay.
and where you can first you pour out your heart to the Lord, getting all that stuff out, but then also asking him some curious questions and even asking yourself some curious questions about
Mhm.
what's going on beneath the surface. Because sometimes what's happening is we can have a divided heart. Our heart can divide. And if you look at the Psalms, King David himself even said, God, give me an undivided heart, or or unite my heart that I may fear your name. And he blew it, as most of us know that know about King David's life. He blew it big time. However, he still loved God.
Mhm.
He committed these major sins, like really, really bad, but yet he
Mhm.
loved God, and that was that divided heart because there are areas of his heart that were not obviously healed. So that can happen with us too, and that's an extreme example. But what happens is we have this dividedness, And the process of journaling can help us to get in touch with what's going on. So we can have part of us that, like, wants to go after God. We love God. We want to do everything. We want to be obedient. We want to do what He says. We want to walk in our purpose. But then there's other parts of us that can be not on the same page, that are actually fighting against that. And the enemy can basically have hold in those areas. And so when we journal, we can get in touch with that, and the Lord can help us heal. Sometimes we need help navigating that with a person, whether it's like going to like a heart sync or inner healing minister or a counselor, sometimes a friend, or maybe even a godly, solid pastor. And all pastors are created equal. So I say that I have to add that, because not every pastor would be equipped or have the calling for helping people navigate their trauma. But if you find the right person to help you navigate it, then, because sometimes when we journal, we can't get there on our own, but we have somebody helping us that's not like stuck in it with it. They're there
Right,
with us, but they're not in the midst of the emotion, and they
right.
can help us navigate that. So I don't know if that fully answers your question. So there's journaling, inner healing or counseling or pastor. And then it's just sometimes it happens on the daily walk as we're going along, God will reveal something to us. It doesn't always have to be super intentional, because God speaks to us in a multitude of ways. It could be through the word, it could be through worship, through nature, through a person, dreams. There's all kinds of different ways He speaks. And it could even be through a commercial. I've had that happen to me through a
Yeah, that's
commercial,
cool.
a song from a commercial. So, God will speak to us and give us a revelation and show us, okay, this is what I'm believing about myself. And there could be an instant shift. And sometimes it's a journey for that mindset to shift. But I don't know. Does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. I love how you said, first, try to figure out where did this come from? And
Yeah.
then where does the enemy still have ground? And then kind of work with that divided heart. And you
Yeah.
said the enemy can take both sides of that. Can you explain that more? Like the enemy can take both sides of the divided heart?
I don't think I said that. But what I mean is, yeah. Well, what happens is he can take advantage of the area of our heart that's not fully healed with the Lord.
Okay.
So the divide, I mean, this could be a long conversation here, but what happens is there's different parts of our heart that God created. And there's like, we have a part of our heart where it's like that part of us that gets things done. Usually
Mhm.
it's connected to the left brain. That's the linear analytical. What's the other word I'm looking for? Linear analytical, logical part of our brain.
Okay.
And then there's other parts of the heart that are connected to the right side of the brain, which is the relational side. Then we have the amygdala, which is the part of us that's the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. Not sure if you've heard of that before, but that's where we get triggered and we go into, like, we're going to protect ourselves kind of mode. So there's
Yeah.
that part of the heart that protects. And then we have the part of us, our emotion part of our heart, that carries the emotion. And then we have our true self, which is the part where our identity center is connected to our brain. I know that's a lot to probably say in here. I don't know, you want to keep that in here or not, but
No,
so
yeah.
we have these different parts of our heart. And when we've had trauma, and that can start from conception. It's not just in childhood, it can actually literally start from conception. The heart actually divides, and the enemy will take advantage of any area of the heart that's been traumatized. It's basically he attaches to those parts of the heart and can influence and oppress and amplify whatever wounding is already there. So, for instance, for me, rejection, that was a I mean, I had a spirit of rejection attached to my rejection, because my rejection started pretty much from the womb. So the enemy would amplify any little thing could set me off.
Mhm.
I could go down to a pit of despair in a second with rejection. And it could be something that seems like, so some people, a person that doesn't have rejection struggles, they would think, what? That doesn't make any sense. Why would that put you in a tailspin? But it's because there was a wounding there and the enemy was amplifying it. But when I had some inner healing and deliverance, that spirit of rejection was removed, that basically removed from the picture. And then I would feel rejected sometimes, but it didn't take me to a pit of despair anymore, because
That's
it
good.
wasn't being amplified by the enemy. So the enemy amplifies our pain. That's really part of his MO, to keep us stuck. So when we get our hearts healed, these different parts of our heart healed, and we heal our relationship with ourselves, which is bringing those parts of the heart back into connection. Instead of being disconnected, they're connected. Then when we don't have that divided heart any longer, and then we don't have the enemy basically taking advantage of those different parts of our being. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. So it becomes a stronghold that we've
Yeah.
just kind of allowed to be there and be part of our belief system,
Yeah.
and we just let it hang out, right? Because we've believed it
Yeah.
for so long, but God wants us to replace it with his truth, like what he says
Mhm.
about us.
Right.
And what is is the time frame different for everybody, do you think, with deliverance and getting free from those things?
Yeah, definitely. It's everybody's journey is different. There's layers. What I've learned is, and because I'm still in process, I haven't arrived by any stretch, even though I am a heartsache minister, inner healing minister, and my mentors, my two main mentors, they'll tell you they're still in process. So that's why I loved your name of your podcast. In the rut and
Yeah.
the premise of it, because it's true, and people need to know that we're all in process till the day we die. But yeah, the journey is going to be a little different depending on the level of trauma and also the person's willingness. And it's not sometimes people, it's not that they're trying to purposely not be willing. They just don't see it. There's
Okay.
so many layers sometimes of trauma and defense mechanisms that they can't really see that they need help. So it takes time. I know my journey's been very long, very, very long,
Yeah.
but I think it's been part of because it's been part of because it is my calling. It's part of the journey being so long is partly because it's my calling to help. It's equipped me to help me to understand people so much better. But I will say that, I've run into people, like even my mentors who've been walking with the Lord longer than me and have more healing than me. God's been taking them into some deeper places of healing, even more recently. So it's really is a journey, but God is with us. And I know a number of years ago, before I actually started really getting healing, this was probably 20 years ago, I wanted healing and deliverance so bad. And I remember one time the Lord said to me, "You want healing deliverance more than you want the healer and the deliverer." And he was right. And that's really the ultimate goal is he wants us to get to know him, the healer and deliverer, more than the healing and deliverance. Getting to know him, when we get to know him, healing is and deliverance are a natural byproduct of getting to know him.
I love that.
So yeah, and it's true. And it's some of it does happen instantaneously and some of it's a process. But I've been at this for 20 years, or maybe more going after healing, and I'm still very much yeah, I'm still very much a process. I'll just say it. I am. But God can still use us and we can still be used and still be in process. So that's what I love about him.
Okay, I hope this next question makes sense, but let's say, okay, we do have some trauma from our past to work through. Let's say somebody has just a recent trauma that they've went through right now. Maybe there's been a death in their family, maybe they went through a divorce, maybe something happened to their child. Like this is a super recent trauma. What can they do to protect themselves from the enemy coming in? Because this is like prime time where the enemy wants to come in and mess with them.
Well, I think a couple things, and I'm not an expert on specifically on grief, but I would say that one thing, of course, just praying and asking the Lord to protect their hearts, having some people surrounding them, just a support network is really important, especially when you've had loss of a spouse, a child, or divorce. Those big things, those are heavy things, and we need a support network. God created us to be a community, so having the right support network, asking God to protect us, staying as close as we can to the Lord, processing our emotions through journaling or going to inner healing or going to a counselor. And also we can use scripture to battle against the enemy. There's a scripture that we actually use in HeartSync. It's called the Lord Rebuke You protocol, but it's in Jude and Zechariah. And it basically, instead of us telling the devil, "I we rebuke him," we say, "The Lord rebuke you," because that's based on scripture. And God is far above all principality, rule, and authority. He's above everything. And he's given us delegated authority. We're delegated authority because we're his kids. So we can exercise that authority by saying, "The Lord rebuke you." And so when the enemy's coming against us, we can say that when he's coming against us. But for the enemy not to take advantage of our grief, sometimes it's not. I don't know that there's really a one point question or one way to answer that because everybody's journey is different. If somebody's had grief and they've had some other underlying things that they've not resolved, and that's going to amplify, or
Mhm.
they call it compounded grief. So it may just take that probably needing somebody to walk with them through it. It'd probably be the best thing I would say. And then also just being prayerful and asking the Lord to protect their hearts and as they grieve. And sometimes, when we're going through that kind of stuff, we might even be angry with God, and so it might
Right.
be hard to even pray because we might be angry with God. But being real with God about that, I mean, David was very real about his struggles with the Lord. And he's a good example of I think a third of the Psalms are lament Psalms. So we can actually literally, even if we're mad at God, if he's really mad at you right now, I don't understand why this happened. Why did you allow this? God would rather us be real with him about what we struggle with than trying to pretend that it doesn't exist or thinking it's not right. Like in some circles of Christianity, you can't be mad at God. Well, no, we shouldn't. It's not good for us. It's not for
Right.
our benefit, but God knows our humanity. He knows our frame. He knows we're but dust. It says in Psalm 103. And he would rather us be real about what we're feeling than try to stuff it and ignore it, because that's not going to help. That's actually going to make matters worse. And when we process it, then we can come around to the point of not having that anger towards God anymore, working through whatever it is that maybe is causing us to have anger with God. So yeah, it's like a combination of things. I'd say, support network, whatever that looks like, praying, processing, journaling, the whole 9 yards. But getting with somebody that understands how to process grief is important.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I like how you said community, getting with people that you trust as you're
Yeah,
going through the process because it's a lot harder alone. And I
yeah.
have the type of personality that I like to seclude myself. So
Mm.
I may like say something happens, I may be like, well, I'm just going to retreat for a while, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
my natural instinct to want to do. And so I'm sure that a lot of people feel that too, but maybe it's okay to have a time by yourself, but then to understand now you do need to reach out to some people. You do need to get some help, whether it be counseling or a group of people that's going through the same thing as you, just a community. So I like that you said that because I do think that's huge, having a community of people to help you through that
yeah.
process. Okay. I think we kind of talked about this, but I wrote it down too. So, the belief systems, which you said are lies, and the fears that hinder us from deeper intimacy with the Lord, is that the main thing that's keeping us from being close to the Lord? Is believing lies about ourselves and the spirit of fear?
Well, I think it's a combination, and that could be individual too. Each person's journey is different, what they've been through, what kind of lies they believe, what have you. But I would say, generally speaking, in fear, like some of the fear that we have there can be a spirit of fear, but some of it's just a disposition of fear due to lies. And can the enemy take advantage and attach to that? Of course, but some of it's just fear from childhood. I mean, that's just like fear is a very big topic, but when it comes to what hinders intimacy, that's pretty much at the core of your question, right? What's hindering
Yeah,
intimacy? That's kind of a loaded question. So there can be
right.
multitude of reasons. Yeah, it can be sin, but it also, like you mentioned, human nature or humanity. We are kind of prone to wander, naturally speaking. It's trauma, the lies that we believe. It could be a combination. Any of those things are a combination. What I have found, I guess I could share maybe from my own journey and what I see with people is years ago, the intimacy, because I was under lies, so much oppression and lies, I didn't think I felt God's love or his presence. And when I went through a season of inner healing in 2012, everything shifted. I had like a crazy supernatural encounter with the love of God twice in this 2-day period of time. And it was so profound that it was unbearable. Like the love of God was so profound, it was almost unbearable because it was so intense. But I came out of that time, I never doubted God loved me again because it was
Oh,
an experiential encounter with the love of God. Previous to that, I believed the lie that he didn't love me. But then after that, I never believed that lie again because I experienced his love. Doubt God loved me anymore after that encounter, even though I did for years prior to that. But then when I looked back, after that, I was out from under those lies. I realized, oh my goodness, I had been experiencing God's love and presence. It wasn't constant, but I actually started to remember these different times that God was actually reaching out to me. But because of
mhm.
those lies, it was like overshadowing what the
Okay.
truth was, if that makes sense. And so that was my experience years ago. And I will say now, I don't doubt God loves me and I do experience intimacy. And there's been times when I've been upset with the Lord or I had to process something and I was really struggling, but I could simultaneously feel connected to Him while still struggling with that because it wasn't like it didn't cause a separation.
Oh, I
But
love
that's
that.
because I've been on a healing journey for a while and I know I'm pretty self aware because of part of what my calling is, and
Mhm.
I've been doing this work for a while with myself. I haven't arrived by any stretch. I can actually simultaneously feel connection with the Lord while also struggling with something. But that wasn't always the case. Before, that was definitely not the case, as I just shared. So I share that because I think maybe that could be helpful to your audience that we can literally have periods of time where we feel totally disconnected from the Lord because we have areas that are blocking us from feeling the Lord because of pain, hurt, trauma, the enemy coming in, taking advantage and amplifying what we already experience. It could be our issues with the Lord. Sometimes it can be even our own relationship with ourselves. That can be a barrier. And I could share a
Okay.
story on that if you want, but I know we don't have that much time. But the point is that it can be a mixture of the two, or it can also be where we are in our journey, is our healing journey. depending on where we are
Okay.
in our journey.
I love that you said that. I love that you said when you got his love and realized how much he loved you, those things weren't overpowering anymore. And you could
Yeah.
still see, yes, I'm still a work in progress, but he's right here with me. Like he loves
Yeah.
me. And there's this struggle here, but I'm working on through that struggle with God. And maybe
Right.
it's uncomfortable, but I'm not questioning his love because of the struggle. And that's
Right.
huge. I love that.
Yeah. That's good how you summarize that. That's important. That's important that we don't like run away from God. We run to God. Even when you were talking about grief just a little bit ago, some people, unfortunately, they do run away or turn away from God because they're so angry. There's so much pain. They don't know what to do with it. Instead of turning towards God and saying, you know, God, even though I don't understand all this, I'm not running from you. Where am I going? Like Peter said, Lord, where are we going to go? You hold the words of life. And so that's
Hmm.
really is something we can hang on to, even if we don't feel it. God, I don't want to go anywhere else because you are the truly the one that holds the words of life. And I don't want to go back in the enemy's camp. But that's where having a community around us to pray us through is really important too, as we're walking
Yeah.
through things.
And then, I don't know how much time you have either, but I did want to ask you one more question kind of in this area of trauma that we've been talking about. And then I did want to get into a little bit about menopause and premenopause,
Yeah.
postmenopause, if you have time for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, this is what I was thinking today. So, somebody has a trauma, maybe from childhood, maybe from another family member, and they want to cut that person out of their life, right?
Mm.
They don't want to reconcile, they don't want to work on it. They just want to put the boundaries up, but maybe they want to forgive them, right? But maybe can you separate those out? Like, are you able to forgive someone and not reconcile? Or do the two have to go hand in hand, if that makes sense? That forgiving someone means you are reconciling with them.
That's a really good question. It's an important question. It's one that people do get confused about. I'm not an expert on this whole topic, but I will say forgiveness does not necessarily mean reconciliation. If there's been like sexual abuse or the person's really unsafe, God's not saying to put yourself back into that abusive situation, but you can forgive them for your sake, your relationship with the Lord, between you and the Lord. That forgiveness is really for you, but it doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. But if it's a situation where it's not really, it's more of us doing that to protect ourselves on our own without God, like doing things on our own, and that's a different story. But there's certain people that we shouldn't cut ourselves off from
Mhm.
if there hasn't been some kind of really unsafe and abusive situation. So each situation is going to be different, but I believe if somebody's been abused, they don't need to go back into that situation. I mean, if somebody is sexually abused, they don't need to reconcile with the person that's sexually abused them, but they can forgive them and be released
Mm.
from the weight of forgiveness. Good. I would like to share a little bit on forgiveness because this is a very important topic for us as Christians, and one I think that some people and again, I'm not the expert on this, but just from what I've learned in my journey and my being a heart sync minister and what I see with people in the word, I mean, we obviously forgiveness is a big deal. It's like one of the core tenets of Christianity, right? But some people teach that it's just a choice. It's a choice and God honors that. And I do believe God honors it when we make a choice to forgive, but sometimes it doesn't happen immediately. We can say, I
Right.
forgive, but there might be some different parts of our being that have not forgiven. So what I'm saying
Mhm.
is like sometimes what we do is we're forgiving from that logical part of us. I believe God honors that. But if there's a part of our heart that's still carrying pain, we're going to continue to struggle with unforgiveness, the feeling, the emotion of unforgiveness. But if we can get in touch with why that situation that happened caused the pain to begin with, all the ways it affected us, we don't necessarily have to go through. Then there's different ways to go about it. In Heart Sync, we have this thing what we call the prayer for the release of pain and trauma. And typically is not having to relive everything unless Jesus says they need to because they got to come out of denial. But typically he takes the pain and it's done. But then sometimes we need to actually walk through the process of, and this is not really a heart sync thing, but more of just some forgiveness tools that I've gleaned from, and I do use in heart sync sometimes, um, is forgiving for the different ways that whatever that situation affected us, whether it opened a door to a lie or opened the door to the enemy. So I'm trying to do this in a very short period of time, but there's a tool that this gentleman that took me through inner healing back in 2012 taught me, which I think is just like a really simple way of putting it. First thing, it's a 5-part process. First, it happened. So it's acknowledging whatever the situation is, it happened, it hurt. So that's processing all that pain. And that's where journaling can be really powerful and important. And it's me everything that every kind of piece of pain that you have related to it, just getting that out. That's basically coming into a place of understanding how it affected you. It happened, it hurt. I've done the same thing. So in some way I've sinned, I've hurt people, hurt people, hurt people. So it's
Right.
recognizing, they may have hurt me, but I've also hurt people. Maybe I've hurt them too, whoever this person is. I forgive them. And that's when you can forgive them once you've done these other parts first. And then
Mhm.
I bless them because Jesus said to bless your enemies, bless those who curse you, spitefully use you. So, and I'm butchering that verse a little bit, but you get the
Yeah.
idea. So the point is that when you start with these other parts first, these other steps of the forgiveness process, then it's going to be easier to forgive and then to bless. And there's more to forgiveness than that, but I think that's probably good enough for now to kind of speak a little bit to it's not just a choice. Yes, God honors our choice. And I understand people are well meaning by saying that, but sometimes that causes trauma to people that are trying to forgive. Like, I kept trying to forgive, but I can't. It's because there's part of their heart that's still carrying pain. And when they can finally release that pain, then it'll be complete. And I've actually personally experienced that myself when I walk through forgiveness like that, that it's no doesn't have to linger forever. But some situations like sexual abuse or somebody's been kidnapped. I mean, that could be a little bit of a journey because there's layers of things that the person has to process so they can heal. So it's not a one and done kind of thing. And so I just wanted to speak to that because my heart is for people not to feel weighed down when they have a struggle with it because it can be a journey sometimes.
It is. And I like that you said that because we can logically forgive. We can even forgive by faith, by verbally saying, I forgive you. I forgive
Yeah,
you. Right. And then we're still like, we still have that emotion and that pain.
yeah,
We're trying to forgive and we're declaring that we are, but then we're still holding on to something.
yeah.
So I like that you said that because it's not super easy or super quick to forgive all the time. Like
Right.
God wants us to forgive 70 times 7, but it doesn't happen instantly. Most of the time I would think it doesn't happen instantly. It takes a little bit of time sometimes to process through it.
Yeah.
And then we can touch on a little bit too. You had mentioned going through premenopause and menopause, and then I guess knowing a little bit about, I don't know at which point you're at. I'm guessing I'm at premenopause, but I don't know. And then there's also postmenopause.
Hmm.
So there's challenges that come with this, and there's
Yes.
challenges that come with the hormone changes.
Yes.
Lots of
Yeah.
challenges. And, how have you been navigating that whole situation?
Yeah, I'm post-menopause now, but
Okay.
I've been through all 3. Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge. Since you might have, women at any of those stages or maybe even before that, but just so they know for when the time comes. Yeah, perimenopause or premenopause, I wish I had known then what I know now because I probably could have taken a wild yam supplement and it might have helped because I'm doing a
I'll
wild
write that
yam
down.
supplement,
Wild
like a
yams.
cream right now that I it's supposed to help bring balance, and I feel like it's helping me right now. Maybe it
That's
could have helped
good.
back then. But, it's what I found back then. It was actually thinking about this yesterday, and I heard this from a woman who is postmenopausal, but it's a gynecologist, and she teaches on this stuff. So she actually is like real life experience with it, not just that it's her profession. And I heard her say on a podcast that women, when they get to perimenopause, start to feel different, and they start to feel like they don't feel like themselves anymore. And I can look back and say that was definitely the case when I was in that season of perimenopause. I kept saying to my husband and one of my close friends, I don't feel like myself. And I thought part of it was hormonal, but I also know now that which I didn't completely understand then, that part of it was trauma too. It was a
Okay.
mixture of the 2, and so the hormonal challenges amplified the trauma.
Of
So it was in like a
course.
cocktail for disaster, and I just wish I had known a little bit more back then than what I know now. But what I have found with menopause, approaching a menopause, when I was getting closer to actual menopause, was the sleep issues and the hot flashes, those were the big things, but postmenopause, for me, And I bet there was brain fog all along from all 3 stages, but brain fog, memory issues, which I've always pretty much had a sharp memory. I could remember things without I mean, I would write things down, but I could remember things without having to write them down. That's not happening anymore. And the motivation, like my motivation, I was so much more productive and motivated before, but since I've been in postmenopause, it's harder. It's been harder. So, yeah, and so what I've learned through this, and I'm still learning and unpacking some things, asking the Lord some questions because I wanna use what I learned to help the women I'm called to serve. But some of the practical things, of course, self-care, drinking water,
Mm.
exercise, eating right, all the things that, we know that we need to do, getting sunlight. I know that can be challenging depending on where a person lives. I'm in sunny South Florida, so that's
Oh,
usually not an
nice.
issue year round for me for the most part. Taking vitamin D, you can do vitamin D supplements because that is important to our mental and emotional well-being, the way we care for ourselves. The wild yam cream I mentioned, that's been helpful, and I think that can help women even in perimenopause as well.
What is the
Um,
cream? What
it's a
cream did you
wild
say?
yam cream. Wild
Wild
yam
yam
cream.
cream?
Yeah,
Okay. Does it
yeah.
does eating yams help too, or just the cream?
I don't know if eating yams help. I think it's the cream. Yeah, there's a natural
Okay.
progesterone in the cream.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't understand all the science behind it, but yeah, it's so far it seems to be helping me. I'm gonna test it out and see what happens when I get off of it because I have to go off of it for a period of time. But I feel like it's that along with some other things that I've been doing are helping me in the whole area of motivation. So those are the biggest struggles I've had. So the self-care is so important. Obviously having community again of people that
Mhm.
understand because we need to be heard. We need to be heard. We need people to understand us, what we're going through. And with that, the lack of motivation. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert, like I said, but I think part of it's the lack of motivation or the part of it's the lack of with the hormone imbalance and the lack of the things that our brain produces like dopamine. Dopamine
Yep.
is helps us to be motivated. It's a motivation neurotransmitter. So and I'm if somebody's watching this with a science background, probably said I butchered that, but the whole
No.
idea is when our brain releases dopamine, it actually is a pleasure hormone, pleasure neurotransmitter, and that helps us to want to take action. But when you're completely depleted of it, you really don't. It's hard to
Mhm.
be motivated. So what I have found, what's helped me, is I started taking some small baby steps. Number of months ago, and between that actually started releasing dopamine, and then that actually fuels me to want to take more action on top of also the wild yam cream. I think it's been a combination of
That
those things because like it's hard to really want to take action and do things. I'm talking like in the area of purpose when you have no motivation. I
oh,
mean, literally, I felt like I was in a fog. Felt like I was in a fog. I couldn't remember stuff, and I was completely unmotivated. So I started taking these baby step actions. And then once I started doing that, it started releasing the dopamine. And then the dopamine made me want to take more action. And it was like a good cycle, a kind of like a move, like momentum, started building some momentum to move forward. But it was a challenge to get there. And I have days where I'm not as motivated as others. And it's usually when I'm not eating well,
okay.
because I like to eat. I enjoy food. And I do enjoy healthy food, but I also enjoy some things that are not as healthy.
Yeah.
So that it impacts the mental and emotional well-being related, especially as it relates to postmenopause. Did that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking about before we talked. So I've been married, I think it's been like 11 years. And when I first got married and I'd get my period, my hormones, of course, my hormones would be amplifying everything, right? So if my husband and I got in a disagreement, I would get more emotional about it. And he'd
Oh,
be like,
yeah.
"Aren't you on your period?" And then I would get so mad. I'm like, it
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
matter if I'm on my period. The emotions still matter. But then I've
Yeah.
realized that's not helping anything. So now when I'm noticing my hormones, like my period is getting close, I have a new way of doing it. Now I tell my husband, like, my period's coming, and now
Yeah,
I
that's good.
understand that I can, the main thing that I need to do sometimes is just not say anything. I'll tell my husband, like, I'm on my period. I don't feel good. I'm not gonna say anything. I don't even have the energy. And so
Yeah,
then that was kind of my strategy.
that's
And he's
good.
always been for me. He's never used it against me, but I think that has helped a lot just being honest about it and saying I am going through this. Yes, my emotions still matter, but I can understand that everything is heightened right now.
Yeah.
So if I need to retreat, I'm not ignoring anybody, but I need some time because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
That's
basically.
good. That's wisdom. That's a good strategy, and that's good wisdom, and I my husband has been understanding too.
Oh, you also mentioned the trauma aspect because if you have trauma and then you're on your period, the period's gonna amplify that trauma too.
Mhm.
And I had
Yeah.
heard a story, I forget where it was from, but this lady who had horrible just issues with her period, and she said when God delivered her of some things in her life, that period pain became less. So
Wow.
that trauma that she had really was when her period would come, it would just get even more
Yeah.
extreme, I guess. So I like how you said, let's also work on our trauma, right? We can do the
Yeah.
healthy things to help ourselves, but let's also dig deeper
Yeah,
and
it's true
work
because
on
we're integrated
ourselves.
beings. Yeah, we're integrated beings, and so we can't always say it's one thing. It's like, there's everything's connected. We
Yes.
we do need to consider all of it,
Yes.
not just the trauma, not just the physical, but both. Yeah.
So then, Michelle, where can people find you? Do you want me to put your website in the description, or do you want them to find you like on Instagram, Facebook? How does that work for you?
Well, we can my website, I have an email address, my website, and also want to offer my intentional journaling PDF for free to your listeners. So I have a link specifically for that. And also, I forgot about that. I could actually include my Facebook. So I'll share that with you
Oh,
so you can
awesome.
include that as well. It's my personal Facebook page, but I don't mind if people, want to find me there.
Is there anything else you want to share?
Or if I could, it'd be great if I could share a couple of other things because they tie in. So one thing is that because I know one of your questions was that how did I get here? A part of it, you did share it in the very beginning, but I don't think I completely answered it. Part of my journey has been, yes, the inner healing, it's journaling, it's my daily walk with the Lord, but it's also been mentors. And I touched on that
Okay.
briefly, but mentors have been critical. I have, two mentors right now, but even before I got to where I am now, I had people that were speaking into my life, journeying
Okay.
with me as I was walking my inner healing journey. Um, and I know one of the things that when I went through inner healing in 2012, it was very profound what I experienced. Like that was when I had those two encounters with God's love, and it changed everything. I never doubted He loved me again. And there were some other spirit of rejection was removed. There were some very profound things that happened. But when I left that time, I went through the most intense season of spiritual warfare I had ever experienced in my life.
Wow.
Even since then, I have not been through that kind of warfare. And I won't get into all the reasons why. There's under now I understand why it was the way that it was. But the main thing I want to say is I know that when I remember the day I got home, I was on my way home from work, and the warfare was so intense against me. It was very much warfare against my mind and my emotions. And I remember saying, God, I don't know if I could do this. This is too hard. And
Yeah.
I felt this sense from Him that what I was going through was not just for me, it was for the women I was called to serve. And so, not to say that God was the cause of it, but He was using it because
Mhm.
he can, what the enemy tends for evil, He can use for the good. And He definitely used that for the good to equip me for what I'm doing today. So I'm glad I went through it. I don't want to go through it again, but I'm glad
Of
I went through it.
course.
And I was pondering this morning, this scripture I hadn't looked at in a while came to my heart in Judges 3. I'll just pull it out instead of trying to do it from memory because I don't know if I trust my memory on it, but it says but basically this is after Joshua passed away, and essentially here's what it says, right? Chapter 2, verse 23. I'll start there because that's the verse right before chapter 3. So the Lord left those nations, not driving them out quickly, and He did not give them into the hand of Joshua. Verse 1 of chapter 3. Now these are the nations that the Lord left to test Israel. That is all. Wait, hold on, let me start it over again. Now these are the nations that the Lord left to test Israel by them. That is, all in Israel who had not experienced all the wars in Canaan. It was only in order that the generations of the people of Israel might know war, to teach war to those who had not known it before. And so, really, what I felt like the Lord did in that season was He was teaching me how to war. He was teaching me how to war because I needed to be able to war for myself and also for the women I would be called to serve one day. And also, Psalm 144 talks about how He trains our hands for war and our fingers for battle. So, if I hadn't gone through that season, I wouldn't have as much understanding. I wouldn't have the equipping. I would have been limited on the equipping that I got in that season. And then the Lord reminded me of maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 years prior. I don't remember exactly when. I remember praying that, God, I want to love, live, and breathe on your word. And when I was going through this intense season of spiritual warfare, he reminded me, he said, "You remember when you prayed that you would love, live, and breathe on my word?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, this is what's going on right now because when I was in that season of warfare, the word of God and worship were my weapons.
Oh, I
And
love that.
I had to love, live, and breathe on the word. And I did get victory. It was hard, but I got it. So I wanted to share that with your audience because I tell you, this is so important. It's so important that we use the word. And I'm even being reminded now, even though I'm not going through that season I was going through back then, I'm actually having a war for my destiny right now. I am
Mhm.
stepping towards it. I'm doing some things within my destiny, but there's so much more to come. And that goes to the second part of what you talk about. Part of your typical interview process is like, where am I still overcoming? Well, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm still on a healing journey. God is still showing me areas of my own heart that need healing. I'm still overcoming fear. I've overcome some, but there's more. As I step towards more of the stuff He's called me to, I have my blog, I have my heart sync practice, but I also am going to be stepping towards starting a community for Christian women online, and then also eventually a mentoring program. And there's some fears I'm going to have to face that
Right.
as I step towards that. And the strategies I'm using are some of the same strategies I've used before: healing, taking action, like we talked about a moment ago, in relation to menopause. But what I'm learning, what I have learned, and what I'm still learning is that like, some healing does happen instantaneously, but there's also the healing happens as we go, as we step forward and start to take steps towards what God's telling us to do.
Okay.
We're actually showing ourselves we can do it because it's usually like there's a part of us that knows we can do it, we can get it done, we're gonna get it done, but then we can have these other parts of us that, because the heart can be divided, they're still in process, that are carrying these fears and these struggles, and we can actually show ourselves as we take steps, and we're going to be okay. And if I make a mistake, it's okay. We can clean up the mess. It's not going to be that big
Mhm.
a mess, is it? Probably not. That's another way that what we talked about earlier is the overcoming perfectionism, just going ahead and doing things imperfectly, and we can actually show ourselves we can do it. And there's healing that comes as we do it. I
Okay.
hope I explained that in a way that makes sense.
That does make sense.
So that's where I am right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a thought came to me trying to bring it back. I'm pre-menopause, so I'm already experiencing the sleep disturbances and
Yeah.
the memory stuff. So what was my thought as you were talking about working through that? Oh, okay. So you said we have to take steps towards the things that we know God wants us to use us with. And it's okay if we make a mistake. So there are certain things in my life that I do want to fix, but they do feel overwhelming. So
Mm,
sometimes I'll say to myself, like, I don't even have the energy to overcome this, right? Like, that's what I'll tell myself. I'll say the main thing I need to do right now is just endure. Like endure these feelings, right? Just endure this season. Because I know I can do that. Those are my personal thoughts that talk to me and what says to me as I'm trying to work through an issue. But I like how you said worship is huge and also being in his word. And then you had said being okay to make a mistake. So a lot of my fear is that I'm going to mess up and that I'm going to mess up things for everybody else too. I don't know what
mm,
that's rooted in, but I have a fear of messing things up for other people. Like if I'm trying to
oh,
help
yeah.
you, I have a fear that I might just be the one to mess it up for you.
Oh, yeah.
That's something I'm talking to God about.
Yeah.
Why do I have that? Why do I think that? Why do I do that? So what I'll do in those situations now, I've been telling myself, like, I give myself permission to mess it up, but I'll just show up. But
Yeah.
I give myself permission to mess it up. Not that I'm going to intentionally mess it up, but at least if I can tell myself,
Yeah.
you're free to mess this up,
It's
then that
okay.
helps a lot and I can move
Yes.
forward.
Yes, for
So,
sure. Yeah, that's good. That's what I call godly self-talk because we self-talk whether we recognize it or not. Sometimes it's good talk and sometimes it's not, But
yeah.
that's a way of actually helping ourselves. Like, what, it's okay if I make a mistake. If I do if it does impact other people, we could just clean it up. It's okay. Those are ways that we can help ourselves along. And then once we start moving to, like, whatever it is that you were going to do, then you realize, oh, wait, I didn't mess it up. And it actually will help rewire our brains and help us to realize, it's going to be okay. Because sometimes it's like it's these things that probably happen in childhood, typically. where we believe this belief systems got installed because of some kind of specific event. I mean, there's so many, I could share so many different stories, but I know we're already long here. Oh, that's good, Angie. That is a big part of healing, is the healing our relationship with ourselves,
That's
for
huge,
sure.
yeah. I'm glad you
Yeah.
said that. And, yeah, giving ourselves permission to mess up, not trying to mess up, but giving
Yeah.
ourselves
And
permission,
yeah,
you
if we do
know?
I that's what a good parent would do, you as a parent, even when you're operating the way that, you want to, not when you're in your like, maybe when you have your moments of not being your best self, but when you're in your best self, your true self, you would want to nurture and love your kids. Like, "It's okay if you make a mistake, that's okay, we'll fix it." It's most things are I mean, pretty much anything's fixable, right?
Yeah,
So, that's how we honestly, we learn more from our mistakes. Unfortunately, it's just the way human nature is. We do tend to learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. So giving ourselves permission, that's parenting ourselves. It's a way to parent ourselves to say, if I mess up, it's okay. It's not the end of the world and we can fix it.
question. So thank you, Michelle, for coming on here today. I'm thankful to have met you. So you have a free journaling guide for my listeners, and that's very sweet. So I will put that in the description as well so that they can link onto that. And also your information if anybody needs to get a hold of you. And do you have any closing thoughts, Michelle, about trauma and any advice for somebody that is feeling it right now and going through some trauma?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you. I appreciate Angie you having me on. It's been great connecting with you and just to honor you for what you're doing because this is, I know, blessing a lot of people. First off, the intentional journaling PDF, before I forget, yes, definitely. It's basically just I take the process of journaling that I've learned and I break it down into bite-sized pieces, like a several day process so that it can be learned in a bite-sized way. And then the person could put it together at the end. It explains the whole process, and if anybody has
Awesome.
questions on it, they can certainly contact me on it, but wanted to bless people because of the things we've been talking about here about trauma, those some of that can be worked through with this kind of a guide with just that person in the Lord. But as far as trauma goes, yeah, I know this time of year can be challenging for some people for a multitude of reasons, different reasons for different people, and the stress. So I would the journaling guide I think would be what my first advice is to use something like that, or it doesn't have to be that specifically, but it could be helpful if somebody's not familiar with journaling to just process with the Lord and getting to the root of why the struggle is there, whatever it might be. I know that could be different for everybody. It's not the same reason for everyone. And if a person's having a hard time navigating that stuff, to get some outside help. That's what I
Okay.
recommend, whether it's getting some inner healing counseling, somebody from their church that they trust that it has an ability to help them navigate. That's what I would encourage because sometimes we can definitely work through things on our own, but there are times when we do need somebody to help us navigate these things with the Lord. It's
Mhm.
basically like what I do with HeartSync which is inner healing. The Lord is the one that does the healing. I just help facilitate the process. So it's bringing a person into an encounter with the Lord, and then He reveals what's going on inside the person's heart to bring healing, to bring His truth into those places, because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
So that doesn't that's one way of healing, but there's many ways that God can heal, but it's mainly just working through it with the Lord, whether, like I said, whether it's journaling or with someone, because sometimes we just can't get there on our own, myself included. I need help sometimes. I mean, I do, I really do, and that's where even having mentors can be very valuable to help speak into our lives and just helps to see things we don't see. But was there another part to your question, or do we touch on everything there?
No, I think you answered it. I'm actually gonna use that journaling guide. So
Oh,
thank you
yeah.
so much. I'm excited for that. I think that's confirmation because I love to write, but I will
Yeah.
take time away from writing and not focus on it. But I want to get back into writing more. So I'm going to definitely use the journal guide. So thank you for that. Yeah. And then I hope you have a good Thanksgiving and Christmas, and
You
you're
too.
welcome back anytime.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Angie. Appreciate you.
Thank you.